Welcome to the Finalizing the Bag series, where we're going to be taking the next 3 days to go over everything that I'm going to be bagging for this year. However, it's not going to be quite like last year for me. And I just realized I left that door open. Classy move. Last year, especially with all the disc reviews I was doing, and I will continue to do a ton of them this year, don't worry. But I was really intent on finalizing and keeping one bag for the whole entire season. And I really think I did that. But this year, things might be a little more fluid, but this is still generally what's going to be in my bag for the whole entire season. And it will take a lot for me to trade out a disc in the bag. However, I feel like I've gotten a lot better since when I built my bag last year. So if I need to put something in that's newer to the bag, I don't think I'll have that big of a learning curve like I did because of the more experience that I've gotten. But Denver has decided to not be kind with me and my filming schedule, so we got a little snow. Luckily, it should actually all melt by tomorrow. But today we're just going to be looking at the bottom of my bag. Tomorrow will be fairways, and then Thursday will be drivers before we get into some other really fun videos, and then I leave to go to Waco. And by the bottom of the bag, I mean putters and approach discs and mid-ranges. We're going to go over what I'm going to be bagging by talking about a lot of the choices that I had and why or why not I'm going to be bagging them. I'll also try to throw them here at Johnny Roberts hole 3 because it's 275 feet, and so it's kind of good for putters. Mids is going to get a little touchy. We're probably going to rip them past the basket a little bit, but I honestly don't think I have my mids fully figured out, and so today's actually going to be helpful in that because ultimately it's just going to come down to choosing one. My philosophy around building a bag is that there are so many discs that fly so similarly that it's hard to say that there's a unanimous best in class in any category of disc, and so it's just going to come down to what feels good for you and then committing to it. I feel very lucky that I get to review a lot of discs all the time, so that kind of scratches that itch of putting things in and out of my bag. And so if I'm going to go and play around, I have a set bag that I'm going to be using for that, and then I still get to go and review a bunch of fun things. That being said, being sponsored by Infinite Discs, I get access to any disc in the world basically that I can throw as long as it's PDG approved for my bag. And just to be open, a lot of companies or people will say that this is like the best disc for anything, and to them that might be true because it's the best disc for them, and maybe that's because financially it's beneficial for them, maybe they're slightly biased towards it. And there are going to be some discs that I'm going to be bagging because there is a slight bias towards the company or I have a financial incentive to do so, but that doesn't mean you should bag that disc. You can buy it if you want to snag some stuff with my stamps on it, but I just wanted to put that out there. There is bias in disc golf. I don't think it's a bad thing because there's marketing. People want to sell you discs. Don't buy discs if you don't need to buy discs or don't really want to buy discs. That being said, let's take a look at what I'm going to be throwing this year. And we're going to start from understable all the way up to overstable in the putt and approach discs, which to me are going to be 2 to 4 speeds. And because I've said that, some of you already know that last year I really loved and bagged the glitch, which I have in here. And I'm not going to be bagging it anymore. The glitch is one of my favorite molds that's ever been created. It's just so fun to throw. The Discmania Spore arguably might be more fun for me because I like how a little bit extra torque resistant it can be. Not all these throws are going to be good, sorry. But this disc is so fun, and I bagged it a little bit last year, but this year it's just more likely than not never going to see a place in my actual tournament bag. I just would rather be a little touchier with a 2-speed, and so there's not going to be any 1-speeds that I bag, not this, not the Berg. And moving up in speed, we actually yesterday did Putter Wars, which if you haven't seen that, there's going to be spoilers in a couple seconds. But I'm going to be putting with the Birdie Disc Golf Supply Marvel for this year. It's a 2-speed. I have a good relationship with Birdie. They sent me out a ton of these. I like a 2-speed throwing putter because it just kind of slows down faster and slows down differently. Instead of really just pushing forward as it slows down, it just kind of drops a little bit more. Kind of like why people like 1-speeds, like the Berg or even the Glitch. So because of that, in my bag, I actually have a Marvel that I'm going to be throwing with. This is a stiff blend Marvel, and it's a little beat in and a little lighter maybe. I'm not 100% sure, but this thing is a pretty flippy throwing putter. Kind of the flippiest, it is the flippiest throwing putter that I'm going to be using this year. And I really like it for that slot. I like having something that I can just stand still, throw, and kind of be touchy with. I can get it to fade out still. I'm very interested when I go down to Waco and to other tournaments that I play at sea level, not here in Denver elevation, how much it's going to flip. And honestly, I've had people question, are you going to use the same bag for Denver and for sea level? And the answer is yes. I might just change some of the discs in the slots or discs in the same molds around. So maybe this one, because it's pretty beat in, I just put a new one in and it flies like this one. This one probably will still work though, for just a little bit touchier, and I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. That's why my first official in the bag of each specific disc I'm going to be throwing is going to be happening at Waco after I've already practiced the course. Now, some other discs that I was thinking about bagging in that kind of 2 to 3 speed slot, it's actually not too many putters. Infinite makes a lot of putters. They make the Tomb right here, which people love, the Infinite Disc Tomb, part of Tomb Gang. This is got a slight bead on the bottom. Some people say it's a Colt on the bottom and a rat on the top. It's very, very shallow. Some people really like it and say it's akin to an Envy, and I just kind of never got super along with it. The kind of bluntness of the edge and then the flatness of the top were not what I was looking for. It was very new to me, so I think I could get away with it. I'm still planning on reviewing every disc in Infinite's lineup for my second channel, Banana Froth, and so I'm excited to actually give this another chance, but unfortunately for Toon Gang, it's not going to be in the bag for me this year. Similarly, actually no Infinite discs are going to be in my putters for the year. The Alpaca was really close. I really like it for very similar reasons that I like the Marvel. They're both seemingly are to be based off of P2-ish discs, slightly deeper dish. The Marvel Wash Putter Wars for why I think it's a very retooled version of that is very different. The Alpaca I liked for my like touchy approach shots. They still both go very far. This one's definitely a little more overstable to get started. They might be similarly overstable actually to get started, as we'll see later. Subscribe, by the way. And the Alpaca is another solid one that I'm not gonna end up throwing. Some soft blends. This is not actually gonna go in the bag. I like how soft it is. It's a little extra domey. The soft blend Marvel, I like that's kind of murdered out. And it's very overstable for a base putter. So maybe this will go in the bag if I need it to. But moving up a little bit, staying in the 2 speeds, one of my premium throwing putters this year is going to be a premium Marvel, which is pretty overstable. I only have one of these, so I'm gonna need to snag some backups. But I really like that it's torque resistant, it's overstable, but it's also relatively slow. Because sometimes when you move into 3-speed discs, you move into discs that kind of encroach on mid-range distances. For context, I'm kind of reaching for a putter if it's anything under 340, 330 feet, I think. Kind of my approach discs are kind of up to around 300. Maybe I can push them a little bit farther. And these I can push a little farther. I probably wouldn't really want to. I'd probably be most comfortable around the 320 to 340 foot range max is what I'm going to be looking for a putter for. But these ones can handle some flex. So I'll flex these, they'll fight out of it and finish a little bit left, but also kind of slow down fast. Then the next kind of class of disc that we're going to look at, which, where did that one go? Where the heck did it go? Oh, it fell down. The Proxy, I really liked at the end of last year, you guys saw. The Pure was in my bag because I was putting with Pures, and I do like throwing the same mold that I'm putting with. I don't know why, it's just weird, and I do it. Some people don't, and I'm like, for some reason, I feel like I have to fill one of my throwing putter slots. But the Proxy is a really, really solid mold. I just am not going to be bagging this year. Basically just because I think I can get Envies that fly basically identical to this, but I can't get Proxies that fly identical to the more overstable Envies. Here's a Prism Plasma Envy. I'm gonna hopefully get some other different ones. I have some Glow ones, I think, or maybe one that I liked. And then here's a Proton Envy, which right now is kind of what I have in the bag for. Very similar to the Marvel, but a little farther and a little faster flight. The Marvel's gonna kind of bite out of stuff a little earlier. This will kind of hold it and then pan and finish flat. Much more like a mid-range, 3.5-ish speed. And then in the same vein, I also want something like that that's a little faster, that is also somewhat flippy, which is where this Electron Firm Envy comes in. And this, it flies like a Proxy. Like, this is a hyzer flip-up disc. I can get it to turn, I can get it to drift, I can get it to never come back if I throw it hard enough, but it goes so far. Some iteration of a base and a premium Envy that are overstable and straight to understable are going to be in the bag, because this is more of that kind of mid-range putter hybrid disc, whereas the base Marvel is more of kind of an upshot disc. The 2-speed base plastic, I probably wouldn't throw it off the tee very much, whereas this one I would. Interesting distinction, but it's kind of there. So, and that leads us into approach disc. And I was very surprised by what's going to happen, because instead of bagging all the same approach discs like I did last year, I'm going to be bagging 2 different overstable approach discs. It is not the Zone OS. I think that this is a little bit much. I know some people really like it, and I do throw harder than when I last reviewed and threw this, so maybe I throw it better now. It is very stiff though, and still definitely is kind of close to that like true 4-speed. As we're gonna get into the mid-ranges, I still have some things to figure out and decide, and there might be some discs that I like sideline or molds that I want to get comfortable with and use that will cycle in and out of the bag depending on courses. What I was bagging and loving last year was a Z-Zone and an ESP zone. And right now I still have the ESP zones in the bag, basically for hyzer approaches and like slight flexes where I want it to flex and then get back to flat and finish a little bit. Not super overstable. And to be honest with you, these are relatively close. This isn't quite as overstable as they get. The Zone OS is definitely more overstable. People really liked the bang and ring top zones for being a little more overstable than just your typical Z zone. But I'm also going to be bagging, which surprised me, a Prodigy A2. I took this out. I bought this from Nate Turner in his vlog stamp drop, I believe is what he calls it, vlog drop. And I was throwing it and I was like, this kind of fits a slot that I didn't even know I really needed. I have all of the Prodigy approach discs that I'm going to be filming and making a video for. I was going to be doing it here today-ish. Probably going to be in a couple days after the snow all melts. But this disc, I kind of love right now. It is so overstable and very fast. I thought because it was so overstable, it was going to be dumpy like the Zone OS, but it pushes so much farther that has kind of eliminated a need for me to have an overstable 5-speed, which we're going to talk about here soon. But I'm pretty sure the putter lineup for me is going to be Envies and Marvels in both base and premium plastics for very different occasions. Maybe not going to have all these in the bag at the same time. This is a lot of putters, to be completely honest with you. And then on top of that, having not a Z zone, but an ESP zone and an A2. I know I've reviewed a ton of discs, and there's basically every disc in the world available for me to throw, and so if I don't mention your favorite putter or mid-range, I just didn't really think that I would need it, or I just hadn't had enough experience with it, and these are all discs that I've had some experience or some incentive to throw, like, to be completely honest, or that have like really blown me away, like the A2, where I just like bought it for my buddy, and I was like, holy crap, this thing is so good. For mid-ranges, I bagged 3 last year. I bagged an Origin, which was one of these 3 typically. It was either this Neo Origin, or this Midnight Prowl 2 that I got from my buddy Matt, or this Midnight Prowl 2 that I got from David over at Apollo Disc Golf. Then I also bagged Pathfinders, which I ended up running because I really liked them, and we have those here. And I had Overstable, which was the Birdie Disc Golf Supply Ultra. This year, I think I might actually need 4 mid-ranges because I found a slot where the Ultra just turned out to be too overstable and too flat, and like definitely felt more of like overstable mid-range disc rather than slightly overstable. Like this was more of a forehand disc, or I really need something to finish left or glide for a while and Anheuser and fight out and fight hard, versus something that I want to be able to throw on Annie through a gap and have it hold a very tight flight for a while. That being said, now that I have the A2, I don't even know if I need something as overstable as something like the Ultra. But that's kind of the one slot that I was like, maybe this is where I need to have something on deck. Because there are times when the A2, throwing it on a forehand, I'm really chopping it over, I'm throwing it hard, it's getting there and that's fighting out and moving back to the right, or I have to throw it so hard to get that flight. Whereas something that's slightly less overstable but still forehandable, like an Ultra or a Discmania MD5, or maybe even the Infinite Disc Raw, would work for those long panning Anheuser flexes that fight out and skip back to the right, similar to the backhand. Doesn't seem super necessary, so that's actually not a category of disc that I think I'm gonna be bagging a lot this year. It'll be very, very specific if I do bag it. That being said, let's work up from understable to overstable, because I actually need to decide on which understable mid-range I'm gonna be using this year. So we're gonna take it out to the course. Instead of all these shots that you've just seen me throw, we're gonna actually be talking through that, and then we'll come back to talk about the next steps. So before we get back out there, I have a good amount of understable mids that I'm gonna be trying out for the bag. I do think it's an important slot to have, especially in the woods. First one we're gonna be looking at is the Thought Space Athletics Mana. Never really gave it too much of a shot. I just ran some cash test ones, but I had the Origins in the bag last year, so Mana's gonna be one. The second is the Jester Disc Peace Train, which people have more compared to a Lobster than a Mana, so maybe it's a little more understable. They look similar, but not identical, but I think these are pretty similar molds. If I was to throw them, I would throw these interchangeably with more Peace Trains, more Manas, maybe other companies who are leased companies, or their molds are leased by MVP. Next are Origins, which is what I bagged last year. They're such a good disc. Feels good, flies good, but there are some other ones that I really am interested in trying. These are the new Konsu from Infinite Discs, which it's a very interesting mold. It's got the most interesting shape out of all these. The rest of them are kind of similar in that they're kind of like a more round, typical style mid-range, and then these are kind of bladed. Very similar looking to a Rolo, but it doesn't fly quite the same. I think it's definitely a little more overstable. They gave the numbers 5.5, -3.0. The flight is a little unique and interesting. I'm not sure if it's going to go in the bag. It's not going in the bag just because it's infinite, and the more I've thrown it, the more I kind of wanted to gravitate back towards some of these other ones. We'll give it a shot as well. We also have the Peach from Clash. I was throwing this in the Clash mystery box thing that they gave me, and this was like the star of the show. I loved this disc. 4-speed, they call it. It does feel a little smaller diameter. I'm interested to try it in other plastics. This is the only one that I have, which is a Sunny Peach, which is a little harder plastic, which I really love. Not sure about it. And then we have a Detour and a Meteor. Kind of got to throw these in because they're great. So we'll throw these all, and ultimately it might just literally come down to me choosing one. Right now, it's like Origin or Mana or Peach, but we'll see if any of these surprise me with their flight. It's 273 to the basket straight ahead. We have a slight right to left. We're just gonna start throwing, see what we like best. Just pretty consistent, clean. Peace Train does seem to be a little flippier. I threw that softer, got a similar flight, but it also went as far. So they might be the same. It might just be like different runs. Origin, baby. Just kind of hard to beat that. Just kind of hard to beat that. Midnight Prowl 2 for a little more overstability as well. Jeez, same exact shot. I'm really interested to see now that I've thrown all those, how the Konsu flies. It's a little more domey. Similar. Interesting. Oh, slip. Slip and flip. Oh, okay. That one's pretty flippy. I think honestly it's a little less familiar of a rim configuration for me. I would say if you get the opportunity to try one out, if you want to buy one, you can. I don't know if we'll have any of them run with my stamp, but the peach, which I'm hoping flips like those, and if it does, it's gonna be sick. Ah, it's straighter. Yeah, more like a Pathfinder, unfortunately. I like that disc, but I do remember it being slightly different to like the easy flip, like all the rest of these. This is a Meteor from Discraft. Also slightly more overstable. Both the Meteors I've have been more overstable. Now I'll try a Detour. Okay, that got some flip. That was the worst throw of the bunch. I'm gonna be honest, the Mana and the Origin are so similar in the Peace Train. It's definitely between those two. Honestly, a little bit of the calculus going through my head, just to be completely honest with you, is one, Discmania and I have a good relationship. Thought Space and I don't, but Thought Space and Infinite have great relationships. Not that I don't have a bad relationship with them, I just don't have a relationship. Because Thought Space has a really good relationship with Infinite, there's opportunity to run a lot more like Manas, much easier than Origin. But like those are some of the things that like are just going through my head as I'm trying to decide, because they are so similar and they fly so well that I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to make a decision. I think I'm gonna choose the Origin, and the Origin's gonna be what I bag. For some reason I keep getting called back to like I wanna choose the Mana. But I think we're going to go with the Origin. The Mana is going to be sidelined because I could see myself interchanging those. Like that's one of the things where it's like the bag's not going to be as like this is what it has to be the whole season for some of these molds, and they could be fluid, they could change. If we decide to run some Manas and we have them with a fun stamp that I have, then yeah, I'll probably switch over to Manas instead of Origins. Maybe run some more. Like I don't know what's going to happen, but both of those I think are really good molds that I can see myself bagging. And I think I have more experience again, similar to what we're going to talk about here in a second with one of the more overstable discs, that I think I should probably just stay with the Origin, even though it's like a little less exciting for me than the Mana, to be completely honest with you. And so I think the Origins are going to be in the bag for now. Moving up from there, we have our straight mid-ranges, where I've pulled out a couple interesting options. The straight mid-range to me means like backhand straight, and for straight I mean throw it on a little hyzer, it stands up to straight and just rides straight. From Infinite and some other offerings, including one that you're probably not going to expect, but we have the Infinite Discs Anubis. This disc, a lot of people have called it a Mako, some people have called it Coyote. It might be a Coyote, but I compared it to a Discmania MD1 when they were made by Innova. Looks very similar to that. So if you want an Innova made MD1, probably going to be an Anubis for you. I don't think that's going to be for me. It's kind of too similar to those understable mids and just like a weird feel, because it reminds me of a Mako, which I treat as slightly more understable, and I like a more buzz style mid-range for whatever reason. And so moving up, we have Pathfinders. I have these three. I've also been really testing some of these in my bag, so this isn't like officially they're there, but they've been around. And so I also have this Aura Pathfinder, which is the neutron plastic, and this one has been very straight, like more straight than I want, overstable wise. Like I throw it flat and it just rides flat. I can flex it and it'll like pan and come out of it maybe at the very end, whereas these are more hyzer flippy mid-ranges. And so I honestly debate even really throwing these, but I think they're still gonna have a slot in the bag. It is a unique enough flight, especially since these are slightly beat in. These proton plastic or ethereal ones, they beat in pretty fast. So these cash test ones, I had to cycle through a couple of them, but I still have some. I was complaining at the end of the year about how they were so straight, and I wanted something more overstable, and so I have a disc later in here that we'll talk about, as well as a different contender. But I realized that's not a problem because it's a good flight. I just need both slots, which is why I think I'm actually still gonna have 3 mid-ranges in the bag, like I was talking about earlier, with the potential to have 4 with the overstable mid-range. But the Pathfinders, I think, are still going to be there. It's just going to determine which Pathfinder's in the bag, and a lot of that is going to depend on the overstable mid-range that we're going to be talking about. Shoot, I forgot to say, the Buzz was also an option. I was genuinely considering it. Buzz sucks. I just have more experience and trust with Pathfinders, and then this is kind of in between slots, and so Buzz is solid. Still has a weird hand feel, so still not happening, but I gave it a shot. And moving up into the slightly overstable mid-ranges, the ones that I can throw on a backhand and hyzer and have them kind of hold and pan and fight out of it a little bit, actually kind of overlaps, because there's a disc that I already have a ton of that I think I can use for that Pathfinder slot, And for this slot, even though I do think the Pathfinder goes slightly farther, and when we're talking mids, we're talking basically up to 360, 365, maybe 370 if I'm feeling it. I can probably get a little farther, but like if I see a hole that's 360 and in, I'm probably reaching for a mid-range or a putter. The two discs that I'm really thinking about for this slot are the Chariots, which I picked up and I was like, okay, this is fine. And the more I've thrown it, the more I've actually like really fallen in love with this mold, considered to be the old Innova made MD3, which people really loved because it got pretty overstable. This is an I-blend one, which isn't even known as being the most overstable plastic. I had an S-blend one, which was more overstable, that I gave to Joel Freeman because I didn't even think I was gonna be bagging this. And now I love it and I kind of want it back, but I'm just gonna grab some more S-blend and I-blend ones because this is such a money disc, because it does come in some other plastics as well. I have this D-blend Glow Chariot, which I haven't thrown a lot of, but having kind of a baseline mid-range, I'm kind of interested in because I feel like it'll beat up pretty fast. I feel like I need that. I don't know why, but I feel like I do. So we're gonna mess around with this guy. And then these are all glow ones. This is a color glow chariot that Joel Freeman gave me. And then I have two Metal Flake glow chariots. Some that have the Midranges stamps, which I really like. These are actually still available on Infinite. New stamp coming very soon. But these are very similar to Pathfinders. The Pathfinders I found, especially that white one, just tends to be a little more wind resistant. And I think, honestly, part of that could be because these are a little bit gummier. You're not going to see it now because it's literally 38 degrees. But these are a little gummier than the harder plastics of those Pathfinders. But I can see myself not bagging Pathfinders at some point, maybe bagging them at some point. It's going to really depend on the specific disc. But the options that I'm going to give myself are whatever that flippy mid-range that we decided on earlier, and then Pathfinders and Chariots to kind of cover these slots depending on which runs and plastics and beat-in levels of those two molds I have. The last two that were options were the Infinite Disc Inca, which is fine. It's kind of like a Big Breed Rock 3. It just kind of never fit my hands super well. And I'd much rather throw the Chariot than this. It feels much more familiar and better in my hands. And the last one, I really wanted to go in the bag and love, but I think it's going to end up being Chariots. But the Clash Disc Guava is also so good. I could definitely see this at some point taking the place of those Chariots. Not 100% sure. That's why there's just so many good discs, and it's like I have these. They actually sent me out one of their Planty ones, which is made out of a bioplastic, which is super cool. But I have a lot of Chariots, and I like the Chariot a lot. I don't think one is better than the other, and so I'm sponsored by Infinite, so I'm gonna throw Chariots. Essentially, is kind of what it is. If Clash wanted to give me a signature Guava, I would throw the Guava. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to be real about it because there is bias that happens in disc golf, and I want to be kind of open because I really like being authentic with you guys because, I mean, you're supporting me through this whole journey, so might as well be as honest as I can be. So it's going to end up being Chariots, I believe. And now moving into the overstable mid-ranges. I was intrigued by a couple of these. The Raw, I'm interested in. I don't think it's as forehandable. It's much more kind of traditional mid-range. Kind of V-Rock or Lion is what I have heard. And so,
oh, I was straighter than I expected.
I don't think I'm going to be rocking with it this year. So it really comes down to the Discmania MD5 and the Birdie Disc Golf Supply Ultra for kind of like, it's kind of like the bench player slot, you know what I mean? It's not in the bag, but it could be in the bag if I really need it. I honestly think the more I get familiar with the disc that I'm actually bagging, the less I'll feel like I actually need this. Maybe the A2 will get a little seasoned because it's still new and so beefy, and so maybe that will make it even less necessary. But this is kind of the disc that for Gannon has replaced the A2 for him. The MD5 actually feels a little smaller diameter, slightly smaller than the Ultra or other mid-ranges in its class. And I really love the feel, and I think I could absolutely use it and get used to it, but especially for something that's not going to be in my bag consistently, and I'm probably not going to get nearly as much practice with. If I ever do need it, I don't think I'll have as much faith in it as something that I did bag for a whole year. And so the Ultra is not going in the bag, but it's going to be that bench player for me. Yeah, it's solid. I don't know how much use, if any, it'll get, but it's nice to know they actually sent me one out with all the marbles, which this Ultra looks incredible. I love this little baby blue. Shout out Derek. But I don't know, I have a really good relationship with Discmania, as you guys will see here coming up in some future videos. I have a really good relationship with these guys, but these were in my bag for a while, and I trust them, and I know how they fly in a lot of situations, and that's kind of how I'm building and finalizing the bag. Thank you so much for watching. We have fairways tomorrow. I have to warm up, and I'm really hoping the sun stays out for a while because I'm ready for the snow to be off the ground. That means I'm ready to go to Texas. I cannot wait for the season to start, baby. See you tomorrow.